You know, it's been said in the past, not unfairly actually, that I strike a resemblance to Peter Sutcliffe. I could actually explain why, right? You see how he's got a slightly drop eye? Right, I've got a slightly drop eye. He likely received his much like in the same way as I received mine. That is to have your cheekbone just smashed when you're about 7. That'll lead for you to be unsymmetrical like that. What he's got is a dropped cheekbone on one side. I've got one of them. So when people say that I strike a resemblance to Peter Sutcliffe, it could be said that you know, both having heads, the dark hair, yeah, and the slight drop where you've been hit a bit too hard when you're a kid, yeah, does have you having that drop eye, that lack of symmetry. But you can only actually see that from that angle. It's a weird one. But yeah, I can understand as to where this, there has been said before, there be a resemblance. It's like, as if that's some kind of family resemblance. So it's like, no, it's like someone hit you real hard. I was hit from like left-handed in a headlock, punched, right? Smashed my face. He could have been hit right-handed, haymaker, blasted off his feet. It's like when you're a kid, it's like with the bones in your face, they appear that they're a little malleable. And if you get like battered about when you're a kid, it's like, yeah, you can grow in some, you can, you know, basically you can be molded a little bit like clay. It's like my nose that's a bit like open at the end. It's like that's the legacy of it being broken. And certain aspects of my voice as well are a legacy as well of my nose having been broken more than once. So it's like, yeah, it's like you look at a face like that, and I look at that face and I'm like, yeah, that's the face of a child who took a few too many fucking good beatings. Not to have any sympathy for this man, because he absolutely deserves none. Peter Sutcliffe, right? See, I came across this. It's like, shit, it's like, that is a deep dive. Descend into Darkness. This guy is a relatively new channel. 2-hour, 49-minute blow-by-blow account of the life and career of, as best he could do, of Peter Sutcliffe, the Yorkshire Ripper, someone who was active in my region. This guy was a native of Yorkshire, Bradford, Bingley, places like that, Leeds. Lorry driver, a fucking idiot. But it's like, this guy, there's an issue I've got with this, because it's like, this is actually a massive story, and it's like, people study Hitler, don't they? The mind of the mind of evil. It's like, no, study this guy. It's like, try and apply a label to this guy and say, well, he's just this, isn't he? He's just a psychopath. He's just a narcissist. It's like, you don't even get fucking near. So you haven't got the frame of reference. It's like, you could say of this guy, he has all of the personality disorders, but is still in control. Or was, for a long time. He kept a lid on what he was doing. Thing is with this one, is what strikes me about him is that he was allowed to live, and it's a big problem that he was allowed to live, because I think this guy, being allowed to live, has actually damaged our society. They should have killed him. They should have executed this guy, and had it so, we executed this guy, and that'd be the end of his story. We killed this guy, and this is what he did. But instead, he's been allowed to like live a kind of semi-celebrity life by correspondence, and rub shoulders with all kinds of people. be someone in hospital or prison who requests could be made to visit. Have all kinds of people come along to talk to him. What tales he tell? Bad guy. Takes the Lord's name in vain, this one. You see, he'll tell you a tale that he's on a mission from God to kill all the whores. And it'd be a matter of, like Revelation 21, the Alpha Omega. What he's going to do. So he throws that one in. He basically throws in a huge G card. He throws in the G card. It's a matter of, I'm on a mission from God and you can't disprove that. Part of your culture that's been there for thousands and thousands of years will tell you that one day I would come and start ridding the world of whores. It doesn't just say whores though, does it? But this guy couldn't stand up to any man. So he just goes whores, where it's also, whores, liars, murderers, thieves. It's not meant to be taken literally. It's that the day of the great revelation, I'll have these people quaking their fucking boots. Oh my God, we don't get away with nothing. God knows the truth, bitch, and it'd be a problem. It means something different. But this guy is one who plays the... He's found convenient. He's one he's kind of found a convenient mythology. But I can't see past that this fella, in essence, found an exploit in society where he identified a group of people who would aid him in their death. He worked out who the most vulnerable people were. The most vulnerable to be murdered, ambushed, isolated. They just happen to be prostitutes. Oh! Well, I tell you what, there's passages in the Bible that say, maybe that's the right end for him. And hey, you know what? I could run with that. I can kind of make that my grand narrative. I'm on a mission from God to rid the world of these whores. And tell himself that. I'm on a secret mission. It's like tools of the trade of the Yorkshire Ripper. Hammer. Kitchen knife. Screwdriver. Has been used... Right, there's jokes in the world, right? Right, there's jokes in the world and you have to be a fucking comedian to be able to tell them. And there are that where you go around to someone's house, right? Anyone's house, who's like worse to where you know where things are kept, and it'd be a matter of you find a hammer, a screwdriver, and a kitchen knife and say, so what's all this? And it'd be a Peter Sutcliffe joke. Basically, it's like they be the tools of the trade. It's like, fucking hell, I don't want to know what else you get up to. Excuse me. And that'd be like an old Jack the Ripper, not Jack the Ripper, the Yorkshire Ripper joke. The other one is references to MC Hammer, Hammer Time, and it'd be like Hammer Time, Peter Sutcliffe, don't mix. Them are jokes you can't tell. Stop. Hammer Time. Because that was the modus operandi of the Yorkshire Ripper. Would be to hammer, ba-bang, 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 until you stop struggling. And then do whatever he wanted to you. And leave you for dead. With his stuff he brought with him from home, his fucking screwdriver and his kitchen knife. So it'd be a matter of, this guy's weapons are untraceable. Who needs a fucking gun? And it'd be every single one of his victims participated in their own downfall. I don't mean that they were judged by that's what he'd be saying. It's like, no, he'd sussed out who the most vulnerable people were, and he deliberately targeted them. Deliberately. He'd sussed out how to find the weakest people, and they just happened to be prostitutes. The people who are most compromised. As so when they die, if you don't see, oh my God, this is like a fucking horror murder, if you read about it, prostitute killed, you're like, fuck them. It's like the situation was only taken seriously when he killed somebody who wasn't a prostitute. Oh no, he stopped just targeting prostitutes. He's targeting all women. And then you've got a movement that have made it about all men. You've got the feminist movement come out saying there needs to be a curfew on all men to stop this man. So he's driven them fucking crazy into hysteria as to where they become then make themselves stupid. Not actually getting to the root of it as to say, you know something, it's like we got a society here where you don't like to look at it, but people fall off the bottom of it and you pretend they don't. And find themselves in a situation where the only course of action they've got is to become prostitutes, and there'll be a marketplace for these people. And this guy be someone who knew that, and you're pretending it doesn't exist, and he's just devouring these people and doing what he wants to them. Like, he's done things that have horrified him and then walked away from it and then thought, hey, I wouldn't mind doing that again. And he's like married to a woman who's deemed schizophrenic. So it's a matter of she'll believe any old shit he tells her, and he'll play all kinds of games as to shit test. So she's living in a fucking world of her own where she's got absolutely no idea that her husband is a serial killer. She'd have every fucking clue, but she'd choose not to have seen any of them. Living in a world of absolute fucking fantasy where the last person to find out was likely his wife of the old chain. This guy became a mystical figure, a myth. He demonstrated to the police that they've got absolutely no way of stopping someone setting about doing what he was doing. They had to build the systems that would now see you get caught pretty quick doing what he was doing. They had to build them from scratch to try to catch him. And in the end of the day, it wasn't that caught him. Some coppers saw him in a car with someone and did actually decide to investigate what was going on, asked a few questions. Things seemed a little bit suspect. They'd actually caught the guy with actual police work in the act. All the computers in the world didn't catch that guy. Once his story fell apart as to what he was doing, what business he had, because he's a massive, massive liar. Once that fell to pieces, he just completely confessed. So it's like, unfortunately for the world, this guy's like spilled the beans on every single last detail of everything he did. And it's like, oh yeah, I remember every detail of it, because he carries his victims around as imaginary people in his head. It's like, oh, that's yeah, that could be expected of people you've like literally snuffed them, who'd be absolute strangers, just nobody, anyone to you. He just did not give a fuck, Peter Sutcliffe. It's like he knew something of power. didn't even, all he did was go about his business and get clean away. Because he didn't respect the lines that the cops drew on the maps. They chased their own tails, and because all they had to go off was a lot of women he attacked survived. He messed them up, but they survived. They got away, got disturbed. And because their memories of the incident are cloudy and are a little bit fucked up when he's hit them over the head with a hammer, all the leads they provided were wild goose chases. It's like he exploited something. He basically tested the criminal justice system, the law enforcement police of this country. He tested them to the limit and defeated them. And he didn't do anything. He didn't have to do anything. They were that poor. He didn't have to do anything because there were no one central body of people who were actually after him. Everyone was tracking him down, but it's like, what do you want? It's like, this guy struck 12 times, murders, and injured about 20 more, and them are the only ones them are only the ones we know about. By my reckoning, people he's messed with would be in the thousands, one way or another. It's like this guy was so brazen at one stage. It's like people started to comment how he looked very much like the photographs of the Yorkshire Ripper. So at work, his nickname was Ripper, and he didn't mind being called Ripper. Again, in that mind, that deceit, that's like a double blind. It's a smokescreen behind which one can hide. It's practically at large hidden. He got away with it for ages, being hidden at large. He had a guy who was a relative of his who knew who he was. He'd sussed him out. He'd sussed him out for himself. I know who it is. Right? And he had reason. He had every reason in the world. He fucking knew who it was. And he wrote to the police, and the police ignored his letter. So then he went down to see the police and said, look, I know who this guy is, and they just blew him off. So you've got it where like they could have caught him like 3 years sooner than they did if they'd have listened to a member of the general public who came in and said, I know who it is, I know the guy. I'll tell you exactly who he is, I'll give you all the details. It's like they questioned this guy 3 and 4 times. Other parts of the force following different leads. Because his car had been spotted so often, hanging around in, like, was it Chapeltown? Right on edge of Leeds. It's like that's like a place where access, like truckers and shit, they'd be hanging about around there, wouldn't they? Wherever in this, in the wider world, wherever you find trucker parks, you find like prostitutes too. Late at night, motorway services rife with prostitutes, and it'd be a matter of if one just simply had a mind to kill, right? All one would have to do is negotiate whatever price she wants paying and just take her anywhere you want and kill her. And it'd be like, that's so evil. And one would only have to think of doing it in order for it to be done. And it's like, there are women in this world, pretend that the world isn't that. So it's like the thrill that fucking twat used to get pulling the rug from under him when they trusted him. That's real low shit, that. There's nothing so low as that. And he'd take a deep delight in being so evil and so powerful. It's like, what a rotten cunt he was. It's like, the trick with him, I'd say, it's like he's a big part of why people are able to tell such a complete story, because when you put the evidence together with his account, it's all there. And it's like, okay, right, we look we're way up his story, and we put it through a psychological lens as to where, like, he's been left in the hands of the psychologists, right? He's been thrown at the prison psychological health, and it's like, this guy could destroy that industry if you were to listen to him. What? Yeah, what label you put on that guy? Capable of that? Thinking he's brilliant in his head, absolutely brazen. Look at me, everyone's talking about me. I'm driving around my truck doing my day job, listening to radio, and everyone's talking about me, and here I am driving my truck. Ha ha ha. Having the whole world knowing who he is and not knowing. And to him it'd be like, kind of like being Superman, you know. Like a prick like that. At large. Cops pick him up, question him, tells a few lies, keeps his face straight, don't let anything on. They let him go. It's like, start trying to put a label on him. Take him back to the child he was when he got his face fucking rearranged, right? And tell me a story as to where it comes across as to where I can have any notion of fucking sympathy, bearing in mind how ruthless, strategic, calculating, brazen this guy was. This guy ended up. At every stage of the game, he had a choice. He could stop doing what he did. He could have stopped. He could have killed himself if it was a real problem. Never intention. No, and in the end, waiting to be caught in order to tell his fucking sordid story. Waiting to be caught in order to get to be the fucking idiot in prison who gets to sit around talking to other people like him. It's like, you let a guy who's in that way disturbed at your psychological services, he'll gaslight them into a place where they're no longer effective. It's like, a guy like that dangerous with his mouth, in view of what he's capable of, has to be seen as being not just a violent threat, a psychological threat in a major way, as to where he fucked with the whole country. And you continue to allow him to spew words into the world. It's like he'd be the absolute reason as to why there has been a death penalty in the past. We don't need him telling his side of the fucking story with that mouth. The chance of a word of truth coming from him. You're going to pay a massive price for every single thing he says you believe. There's been questions in the past, right, about, you see, this is the thing, this guy left crime scenes. He left it where people were finding his victims, and it'd be the horror show from fucking hell. He were leaving little messages all over the place. And there's people pointed to in the past that they have reason to believe. It's like him being photographed with Jimmy Savile, who himself was a monster. Likely Jimmy Savile lived the same fuck them whores punishing fantasy. So eye to eye with him, could probably have a conversation with him about certain things they had in common in their beliefs as to the value of the female of the species. And that be that they kind of purr on the same vibe, don't they? They'd be able to share the odd inescapable truth that we're not to speak of. Ever. The thing that alarms me, and a little, I'm not like super like, oh my God, but it's a matter of, as someone who, of this guy's nature, because he really does like to mouth off, doesn't he? Or he ended up liking to mouth off a lot. When he got caught, he mouthed off, he gave, what was it? A 16-hour confession in one sitting. A 16-hour confession. He was desperate to tell that story. He'd been writing it in his head from the start. Gets to tell his story, have it all written down. It's like you finished the job for him. You gave him what he wanted. It's like the devil's work done. In future, you'll never hear of people fucking hitchhiking. Because it's like, this guy frightened the whole country. I remember when this was a thing when I was a kid, when people were afraid of this guy. It's not safe for women to walk around at night. And it's like, truth be told, it never was. It never was. But it's like this guy's shone some light on that, and now you've reason to be afraid, where before you weren't afraid, but now you are. And you stayed afraid. Because it wasn't a safe place in the fucking first place. It was an illusion of security that people came along and broke. When they saw that there was nothing defending it, there was nothing holding it together, they just decided to just exploit it. Or he did. And others. But I tell you something, he said, if I was to put him down with wrong uns, networked, damn, it's like the crime scene enthusiast. I'll tell you. Those in the world who might want to fucking see his handiwork. In them times between him doing what he did and them bodies being found, sometimes it can be days pass. If he's in any dirty circles in the world, the kind of people he's in with, the kind of people who'd want to see that shit. It's like dark as the things he left behind in the world for people to find are the worst things you could ever imagine seeing. It's hard to think about. It's like the guy who went on to play Bruce Battersby. Brad Battersby. Bruce Jones, the actor. What was he called? Battersby in Coronation Street, that one. What's he called, his first name? Real name, Bruce Jones. He's actually an old friend of my brother-in-law's father. He actually found one of the Yorkshire Ripper's victims. Went to visit someone he knew. Went to the house, door unlocked, went in and found a woman who'd been like savagely mutilated with a hammer and all kinds of basic kitchen gear. And it's like changed him. It made him a completely different person. Like that be gave him the fright of his life and marked him for years. Like changed, disturbed him. It's like there are those in this. What I mean, he went on to have a good career, didn't he, on the telly? But it's like there are those in life who will witness something like that and and end up having a terrible outcome for him. So it's like, in that, he did terrible, shocking harm to the people who had to be involved. It's like he really, really fucked the coppers up. Traumatised the coppers, traumatised the coroners. It's like those who had to find and clean up his messes were like traumatized and deeply, deeply disturbed by the things he'd done. And then you've got as to where it's like, then there's the thing as to where, in some cases, the people who he targeted be so vulnerable and alone that there'd be no one to claim them. They'd be the unfortunate, forgotten people. Terrible. It's like he'd worked out he could do what he wanted and no one could stop him. And he worked out who the easiest people to target were, and he struck right at them. And then would have it as to where he's on a, he's an enlightened sort. He's on a mission from God. God told him that he had to kill the prostitutes who were doing a terrible harm to society. Oh, so that's all right then. It's like, what a motherfucker. He should have been killed. Why? Well, so then he couldn't be running his mouth at people wanting to find out more. Learn about this man. To hear his words coming from that place. It's like, how much has that guy's fucking twisted logic found its way into our society one way or another? What marked influence has he had on our culture, the Yorkshire Ripper? What did he teach us? What did he teach other people who might have ideas like him? That you only need the will to do and get away with. If you strike people at random, they've no reason, they've no motive, they've no fucking names. It's retard people, isn't it? But he teaches a pattern or a set of tactics as well. You don't have to murder him, you can use his kind of targeting of the weak for other purposes. A whole, slew of things. You don't have to murder them. He liked to murder them. But preying on the weakest, knowing that no one's going to come looking for him. Understanding that there's bottlenecks in society that force people into positions that they wouldn't want to be in but find themselves in, as to anywhere around the world, wherever you want to go, somewhere right now there's somebody who's on having sex for money. There'll be likely live sex shows going on, 1,000 channels available right this moment in time somewhere on the internet. And it'd be that's well and truly out of the ball. It's like the Yorkshire Ripper is an example of someone who found that out for himself a lot sooner and went right at it. It's like, what a shocking thing. It's like, the thing is now though there's almost really a silver lining to the story of like the Yorkshire Ripper is the systems they built to try to catch him, right? Still exist and have been improved. So now they definitely catch him by the third time he struck, I'd say, with doing what he did in his car with his tools, moving around. Once, scot-free. Second, pattern. Third time, every fucking camera on the streets. and then running that information against the previous footage that they weren't paying any attention to, and then getting one of their supercomputers to run a scan on that license number and having his name and address the third time he did it, and they have him, and it's this guy driving this car. They catch him. They actually catch him now with their license plate identification. They catch him. He wouldn't get away with killing 12, he'd get away with killing 3. And they catch him. But then in the meantime, shit, there's loads of other ways, and then it'd be a matter of that business of putting yourself out on the street. Rare now. The modern Yorkshire Ripper might be driving around fucking hours trying to find someone to kill. So he might have been driving around at random for the last 20 years, but couldn't find anyone vulnerable enough to strike against, and just kept going. Can't do it no more. People are too wary now of fucking people crawling around in cars. It's like the gig is up for snatching people off the street or enticing them into cars. The street walking prostitute's probably got a mobile phone and gets sent the odd text. Has found safer ways of doing a deal than being wide open on the street. Although that's there to be exploited as well in this, well, practically exactly the same way, but then it'd be something that has a paper trail, IP addresses, login details, and ultimately traceable. Do something bad, might get caught for it the first time he did it. So it's like the systems he built to try to catch him have been built upon and made it so that you couldn't actually really get away with what he did. Now, not in the way he did it. Now you'd have to always be driving a different car, and that's not as straightforward as it might seem. So have you seen the things these days with number plates where you can just see a number plate, know your own number plate, type in at the internet and get details of your own car that's like, that's published on the internet. It's like the tech they've got now for tracking vehicles makes it so you'd have to be, it would be beyond the means of a mere lorry driver to be able to cover his tracks in any meaningful way to be the modern day serial murdering Peter Sutcliffe and get away with it more than once. You could be a guy like him wanting to do murder, coasting motorway service stations for prostitutes who look like they might be mugs. Because if you're that way inclined in your brain, you've got a real chance that you'll pick up women off the street who are more dangerous than you are. If they're willing to get in the car with you. Like turn the tables on you and fucking rob you. So it's like, that's not worth it because you'd run out of money before you struck home just in the price of fuel. So it's like for the driving around murdering type, the world has changed so much, hasn't it? You'd get away with it once. Maybe get caught the one time now pulling a stunt like that. But it's like, I don't know how the world would cope with, the modern world would cope with someone who got away with what he got away with, getting away with it for as long as he did. He did. Years. And just carved up, like mutilated, like horror shows wherever he went. wherever he struck. It's like, don't know how the world would deal with it. I don't know how the world would deal with it. And it's like, well, maybe it does, but they don't. Somebody like him, it's like that guy was real. He was calculating, right? He was an opportunist. He wasn't stupid. Went years without getting caught. He's not a stupid person. Didn't get drunk and fucking blab to the wrong person, although there were plenty of new people who knew who were wrong and kept it together, held the job down. Had a home life with his wife who was none the fucking wiser. Got away with something big. We sat in his living room watching fucking news programmes about himself and thinking it's so funny, but not being able to tell anyone about it. That's like a reign of terror that he was allowed to get away with it. There's a story comes to mind of a chap I used to work with who was a Geordie who I used to work with when I was driving, called Alan. He was great to work with, Alan, because he was so cheerful. He was a smiler. He was one of them, jolly Geordie fella. He had a nice outlook, Alan, so it's good to work with Alan. And he was telling me that he and his family have got a bad name in Sunderland, and it's like, I don't get time of day around here, so this job away from the town is better for me. It's like, you being from Rochdale, it's like you give me a chance, and I'm all right, aren't I? He says, well, in Sunderland they don't. It's like, why? He says, because it was my uncle who made those false recordings and letters that were sent to the police impersonators in the Yorkshire Ripper. And it's like, and he got caught and he's gone to prison for it. And it's like the whole family are just shamed. It's like everybody around him. It's like, oh, that's why. It's like, we're notorious. It's like our family, the people around him. Our family is now notorious for him because, truth be told, it's like, while the police were searching the wrong places and investigating the wrong stuff, 3 more people were killed by him. So there's blood on his uncle's hands to some degree, and he went to prison for it. And it's like, yeah, well, around my neck of the woods, it's like Alan. It's like, I'm from like what they'd say is a bad family. There's someone who was like looking in his way for an opportunity. It's poor bloke, but looking for an opportunity to get the fuck out of Sunderland, to be around people who give him a chance. Because it's like, oh, it's that bloke. Or people would think better of him and they say, you know who he is, don't you? You know who his uncle is, don't you? And it's like, he told me a tale, and I actually, because it was something that he didn't do it, it was just something that was sprung upon him, his kid. So he tells the tale, and the way it's like, oh, it's so bad, so you wouldn't believe it when it all came out. I was like, oh. And I thought it was funny. It was a funny tale. It's like to work with someone who's got, because guys who used to do my job, none of them have got a straightforward reason as to why they've ended up doing what they're doing. There's always like, look, I've had to like escape or get out of it or become an incognito person for one reason or another. But it's like, there was people that I worked with who had some like real checkered pasts. And it'd be, I'm kind of now doing the only job I can do, because if I wasn't doing this, all that would be left to me is crime. Loads of them. And every single one of them be people who in their own way knew too much. And it's like in the same car you'd have copper, former copper and former coal miner from time to time. It's like, that's the thing. It's like we had guys, I've worked with guys who's like, they can't really work for anyone. It's like, well, why? It's like all kinds of reasons. And some of them be for like extremist political associations or having been in trouble with the law for one thing or another. But it not usually be for criminal shit, it be for that kind of subverted the system trouble. Not murderers and thieves, but the number of farmer coppers I used to work with who were just mustard people to work with, who were bitter because they'd been forced out of what they liked, because a lot of them enjoyed it. It's like I worked with a guy once, a Cockney fella who was a farmer copper, and he was a driving copper, and he was fucking unbelievable to work with. It's like, why? It's like, because this guy put his fucking foot down. It's like he was experienced. It's like, you know, he was a guy who would be expected to chase someone down one time. I worked with another guy who was a privateer rally driver. He's too old to do it now. But he was like outrageously good at driving. Like crazy. And he used to do that job because he was firstly a first class driver, and it was flexible. He could still do his rallying shit. It's like he wasn't messing about it. He was called Alan as well. Carlisle lad. But he once took me for a blast. He was dropping me off at a Centre Parks to go and pick up a van. And them places are usually like off the grid a little bit. They're a little bit out in the open. Sometimes a good running through there. And he took me for a whiz round, and we were driving like a Fiat Punto, and he just absolutely smashed it through the place. Like, fucking hell, you can drive. It's like, fantastic. Unbelievable driver. So it's like I used to find myself in and amongst all these interesting folk from all kinds of different backgrounds. There was a guy I used to work with who used to enjoy running into. I fell out with him first time I dealt with him. I'm like, fuck off, don't talk to me like that. Who do you think you are? And I got to meet him. And we got on right well, and then he put it together that I was the guy who'd fucked him off on the phone, having not met him. And he decided I were a bad guy, and then he met me, not knowing it were me, and then we got talking, and he's like, all right, so we'd understood between us, we'd had a misunderstanding. So we got to be people who enjoyed working together. But he was an older guy, but he was a councillor, politician. Up in North Yorkshire. And he was saying that the job he did, he says it basically made it so he didn't have to take any money off anyone. The fact that he was a guy who worked job to job moving vehicles around meant that, you know, he wasn't reliant on anyone around the town or around him for a job or for anything. Because it was like Thirsk, I think he was from. So it was like not a big place. So it's like, yeah, I work, so he works as an agent for a southern company out of there, and it's like, well, I'm not taking anyone's money, am I? Like I say, staunch. They're people I know, staunch members of the Conservative Party I used to work with, who were, in their own way, absolute reactionary, but were conservatives. They were like the outraged social justice warrior gang, but from the opposing view. The same people. And in understanding that extreme right and extreme left are often the same people who could never get along, but are just the same. Yeah, I came to learn that having been hilariously having this war with Kevin, Kevin is one of the sweetest people you'll ever meet, but he's got this where he can just turn on you and be vapid and get really annoyed suddenly. But otherwise, he's sweetheart, absolute sweetheart, and then he's fucking what? So he's a proper snapper. So under the surface is someone who's going to give you a real grilly. And he used to be a conservative, capital C, like government type. We are the Conservatives. And he had me marked down as a lefty, right? And in his way, from his point of view, everyone was, right? So he used to be so funny and throwing it in there saying, have you seen what your lot have done? So he'd hold me accountable for every action of the left. Your lot again, see what your lot have done. And it'd be I used to love it so much. It was so funny to be every day faced with a kind of fanatical right-winger throwing at me, making me personally accountable for all the missteps of the left. I used to think it was so funny. I used to really enjoy it. And I'm like, no, I want like both of you dead. I'm not one of them. It's like, yeah, but it's like you're just the, what was it? He was like, I was like pretending to be a revolutionary, but in my heart I'm just a fucking a socialist. And he's like, oh, same could be said of you, mate. But just in the opposite direction. So you want to control, and so do they, but they want to call it something different. You learn it from them, but it's like the way that was so hilarious. So then it'd be, oh, right, so you play the same game against him and you're like, oh, have you seen what your lot have done? What? Yeah. You see, everyone's got a story to tell. And in my case, it's like a long trip all the way to the bottom. And it's taken ages, years, to reach the bottom. And then longer to understand why. Everyone has got a story to tell as to where they either fought and struggled and won, or fought and struggled and lost. But I don't think anyone gets away with not fighting or struggling. Nobody. Those that say they do it, liars. But on Planet Scam, whew, it's a paradise for the predatory Planet Scam if you're willing to lie. If you're willing to lie, you can get whatever you want from anyone by promising things that can't be promised. Promising things that can't be promised. Thinking of Hustlers University. So that's now been exposed as you join that, and it's like you basically joined the free workforce. It's like, guys, right, you fellas out there, right, I can put you to work on the internet if you want. You can join my ARC server and you can get to fucking doing some like taming and building shit if you want. There's loads of room. So if you want to do something on the internet that you're not going to make any money at, but you know you might be building something and learning some practical skills, you can play ARC with me if you want. And not have to pay a penny. You join Hustlers University to be abused. And you either walk around with it understanding all the tools of the grift, because they are giving all the tools of the grift, but the teaching method they're using is you're having to pay to learn. You see, I was educated in all this grift shit when I was like 17 or 18 by chaps in the pub who were taking money from me by making bets against me I couldn't win. You know, we were thinking back last season of Better Call Saul. where they were going to rip off that guy, and he was teaching someone the grift. And in teaching someone the grift, he was making them pay for rounds of drinks over and over and over again, and then he was taking money and taking money and taking money by offering this guy bets that he thought he was going to win every time and always lost. Well, I played that game. It brought so many memories back watching that, because I've had people play that game with me. And say, you pay to learn, but it only cost me a few quid. It only cost me a few pints. It only cost me a few pounds. Looks can be deceiving. All kinds of tricks you can use with old things in the pub. So like you can fit that. I bet you can't. Things like a glass that looks small is actually quite a big glass, and it's like I can fit that in that glass. That no, you can't. And which one I bet? All the pub games, the pub tricks, they're all about teaching you, right, pay to learn, this is a trick, you're being deceived. What on first glance appears to be real is in fact a deception, and it's a well-known deception because these tricks work on everybody until you learn them. And then they don't work. So you join Hustlers University to be tricked, and in being tricked, learn the trick. And it seems to me, in what he's put out there, Tate has made most of the best tricks freely available to people. But most of the best tricks involve deception. And it's like, so you want to be a liar? Do you want to win like that? Because there's nothing clever about winning like that. You can just be better at winning like that. And Tate has been teaching people to win like that. Most of the ones he's taught to win like that are not smart enough to know about respect. So not being smart enough to know about respect, they will see people as just cash cows. So they'd understand that if they reach a big enough audience, they can find themselves lots of mugs. Details of that scam coming out, where it's like guys who haven't made a fucking penny hustling for Tate, telling other people that they're making 10 grand a month to hustle them in order to get paid, and have genuine, actual, wide-eyed, foolish kids say, yeah, I want to know all the tricks, I want to know all the tricks. And end up learning how to spam somebody else's videos and dropship and crypto. So if you want work to do online, you can come and play with me. It's like I've got a new map, right? Genesis. It's like I'll set up a server. You can build me a base on there, so when I turn up, it's all built. If you want to spend time online building something, build me a base. I'll put you to work. It's like, clear that forest and build a big castle there, will you? Make it big. And be about your business, and then I'll come round and have a look at it, and I'll let you know whether it's big enough when I see it. Like I'm like Stanley Kubrick. Like, I don't know what I want, but I know what I don't fucking want.